This is Brenna Quigley, your personal geologist and terroir guide. Join me on a road trip through the geologic history of your favorite wine regions around the world. This is Roadside Terroir. Season 2, Burgundy's Côte d'Or, is made possible by our Season 2 partners, Becky Wasserman and Company, La Palais, and Acker Wines. Acker is now a proud Grand Cru sponsor and the exclusive wine auction and retail partner for La Palais de New York, the greatest celebration of Burgundy on earth. This year's celebrations are on, now through March 4th. Together, Acker and La Palais are committed to bringing the great wines of Burgundy directly to you via auction, winemaker dinners, tasting events, and retail offers. As the largest fine and rare wine auction house in the world, Acker makes it easy to find the elusive producers we feature, and have even compiled an ever-changing selection of wines from the producers featured on this show. Check out ackerwines.com/roadside-terroir to explore. To celebrate our listeners, Acker is offering a discount code for your first purchase. Just use the code ROADSIDE to get 15% off orders of $350 or more. We're determined to keep this content free and accessible for everyone. If you'd like to support our show, please consider becoming an insider. Insiders have access to lots of cool stuff, including extra photos, travel guides, and extended interviews with our guests. To learn more, visit our website, roadsideterroir.com. Please don't drink and drive, and remember to keep your eyes on the road. This episode contains explicit language. Over the past 5 episodes, we've scoured the Côte de Beaune searching for the secrets of Burgundy's terroir. Along the way, we've made some historic discoveries, felt the power of Jurassic limestone, and met some incredible characters. Today marks a shift in our focus. From the varied red and white patchwork of the Côte de Beaune to the world's most hallowed ground for Pinot Noir in the Côte de Nuits. A keen burgophile may have noticed that we've seemingly skipped over the villages of Santenay and Morange. But don't worry, we'll be back for them before the season's over. We're heading north from our cozy home in Beaune, past the regal hill of Corton, and into another completely new Burgundian realm. As we continue on this journey, be prepared for everything you think you know about Burgundy to be turned on its head. We've learned a lot together over the past 5 episodes, and while it's all true, there is still so much more to this place. In this episode, we start doing some real myth-busting as we dig into the complicated layers that exist between the rocks and the wines in order to determine what makes Burgundy, Burgundy.
You do have some of the really iconic appellations of Burgundy in the Côte de Nuits.
Here's Daniel Jonas.
The Grand Cru, most of the Grand Cru Burgundies are in the Côte de Nuits and are red wine. So you have to think that some of the most sought after in terms of collectibles and in value of red wines are located in the Côte de Nuits.
The Côte de Nuits is the northern counterpart of the Côte de Beaune. It extends from just north of the village of La Douai up to the urban sprawl of Dijon to the north. While there are minuscule amounts of white wines made in the Côte de Nuits, it's truly home to some of the greatest Pinot Noir on the planet.
There's a sense of grandness, of course. There's a sense of almost irreplaceable treasures.
Here's Paul Wasserman.
It's impossible to discard not the value of the wines, because that's really a much more modern thing, but the sense that they're irreplaceable. If I really boiled it down, I would say Romanée Conti and Musigny to me are just things that are precious. They don't act like any other wines. They don't feel like any other wines. But you just have a feeling that it would be a catastrophe if those two were lost to the world. And so the Côte de Nuits, it's special in the sense of it can literally produce the greatest reds in the world.
I think that there's an undue amount of attention that's paid to the Grand Cru because we know they're great. We know they're like the holy grail of Burgundy, but they're just a small part of the production of Burgundy, and they're a small part of the story of Burgundy today.
With the hill of Corton in our rearview mirror, we speed along the D974 towards the Côte de Nuits. And our first question is, Where does it start? We ask our trusty geological expert, Françoise Vannier, who pulls off onto the side of the road in a seemingly innocuous location.
Here you are at the limit between Côte de Beaune that starts after the wall and La Côte de Nuits that starts here. Okay. So that's funny, but there is no limit.
Geologically, or at least topographically, you might expect to see something quite striking to delineate such a significant boundary. Because of the historical and practical separation of the Côte de Beaune and the Côte de Nuits, there have long been myths surrounding its geologic origin. Many people, including many geologists, once believed that there was a major tectonic fault that marked the boundary, and more recently this feature has been described as a giant as in tens of kilometers, downward bend or fold, called a syncline. But Françoise's detailed work has helped to reveal that it is actually not so geologically glamorous.
But definitely, to my opinion, it's just a human creation around 1 century ago between the vin de Beaune and vin de Nuits, the wines of Beaune and Nuits, but no geological reason to. If I would have put a change, geologically speaking, it would have been after Corton. I would have included Corton in this area, and after, things are different from Savigny up to Les Maranges, but not exactly here. So
instead of a clear line, the change from Côte de Beaune to Côte de Nuits feels more like a gradual shift. And yet, as with most myths, even though they may not be precisely truthful, they exist for a reason. There are some clear geological differences between the Côte de Beaune and the Côte de Nuits that are responsible for creating two distinct landscapes and two distinct terroirs. As we know, all of the rocks around here are limestones formed during the Jurassic period. But the rocks in the Côte de Beaune are actually younger than those in the Côte de Nuits. The Côte de Beaune strata package is Oxfordian to Collovian in terms of geologic age, or approximately 158 to 164 million years old. These rocks are more marly in composition, and therefore softer. The classic stratigraphy of the Côte de Beaune goes something like this. From youngest to oldest, the Nantou limestone, the Pomard or Pernod marl, ferruginous oolite, the Digonella divinensis marl, and the Chassagne limestone. The bedrock of the Côte de Nuits is made up of more pure, hard limestone compared to the clay-rich marls of the Côte de Beaune, and is on average older. These rocks are Bathonian to Bajocian in terms of their geologic age, or approximately 164 to 171 million years old. There's also a lateral facies change that happens between the two subregions, meaning that even in areas where the rocks are approximately the same age, they formed in slightly different geologic environments. Check out episode 2, The Hill and the Valley, for a deeper explanation of these lateral changes. The classic stratigraphy of the Côte de Nuits goes something like this. From youngest to oldest, Comblanchian limestone, white oolite equivalent to the Chassagne limestone, Premo limestone, Ostrea acuminata marl, and crinoidal limestone. The classic Burgundian slope profile shows off in all its glory in the Côte de Nuits. A gentle concave slope that steepens toward the top and collects clay and limestone colluvium at the bottom. In fact, in the Côte de Nuits, this entire slope is notably narrower in most areas, with village-level vineyards only rarely crossing over onto the lower side of the Route de Grand Cru. In some places, it can be a touch steeper, because it's built upon that harder, older limestone. And, even more significantly, the slope here is more uniform than in the Côte de Beaune, more regular with fewer combes or valleys. The combes that do cut through the slope are much steeper and more narrow throughout the Côte de Nuits than their broader, more open counterparts in the Côte de Beaune. So, as we enter into the Côte de Nuits, we wonder, can we taste this 10 million year difference in geologic history? Between soft marl and hard limestone? Does this change in geology influence changes in human tradition or in winemaking style?
What feels different? No, I was going to make a joke, but then you're going to put in the thing, so I'm not.
Do it. You can almost catch me.
As we call it the Côte de Nuits tax, as soon as you enter the Côte de Nuits, there's 30% more new oak. But that's a joke.
When blind tasting in Burgundy, the first thing you try to guess is if the wine is from the Côte de Beaune or the Côte de Nuits. I asked Paul to explain how you might make this distinction based purely on the taste of the wine.
There's a sense of power in the Côte de Nuits, even in the shy vineyards. Then, of course, you start thinking about all the exceptions, but if there was a generalization, power or depth, and for many of the villages, a sense of class in the tannins, because the villages in the Côte de Beaune that deliver similar power tend to be more tannic, a little more gritty.
As we continue our drive, there's a small section of what feels like no man's land between the Côte de Beaune and the Côte de Nuits. Large, presently active limestone quarries take up a good amount of slope real estate, and the stonemason industry seems to overshadow wine production.
We're almost at the southern end of the Côte de Nuits in the village of Comblanchien. There's no village appellation here. It's Cote de Nuits Villages, but it's actually pretty exceptional.
The first vineyards we begin to see belong to the more general appellation Cote de Nuits Villages, which also includes a bit of Brochon in the north between Gevrey-Chambertin and Fissan. The Cote de Nuits Village here belongs to the villages of Courgaloin and Comblanchien, though without official village-level status, those names can't appear on any labels. Because of this, these areas have historically been considered a bit lower in the quality hierarchy of the Côte d'Or. And yet, great producers working with stellar vineyards are proving that this may be one of the most undervalued pieces of the entire Côte d'Or.
Some of the best wines are made in Brochon and in Courgaloin, such as Camille Thiriet, Didier Fonerol, Lienhardt. The other thing to say about Cote de Nuits Villages is that I think that today, with the value of Burgundy, the cost of Burgundy from the more famous appellations has gone so high that some of the young generation can't afford to buy their vineyards or start a domain in a village like Gevrey or Chambol, Von Romanée, or etc. So they have been able to find land in the Haute-Côte or some of the areas in the Cote de Nuits Villages. And this has enabled young, talented winemakers to really develop their craft and to produce really authentic Burgundy at what I would call reasonable prices. Even a village wine from Von Romanée or Chambon-Musigny on not the best plot of land is going to cost more than a really well-situated Cote de Nuits Village lieu-dit.
The working quarries we see here are exploiting the slope for the beautiful, hard Comblanchien limestone, named after the village, not the other way around. We've already seen a glimpse of this rock in Corton and will continue to follow its trace at the top of the slope as we explore the Côte de Nuits.
One of the specificities of Comblanchien and Courgaloin is that the slope, to my opinion, is very gentle and the vineyard is short. The area where the vineyard is planted is very short. Yeah. The Comblanchien is outcropping in the forest, I'm sure. The Comblanchien has been exploited as a marble in Comblanchien and Courgaloin, and you see...
Françoise explains that though the stonemason term for this material is marble, that it isn't actually geologically accurate. To a geologist, a marble is a metamorphosed limestone, meaning a limestone that has been recrystallized due to extreme temperature and pressure, usually due to major tectonic collisions. In this case, the rocks have not been metamorphically altered, but still function as a marble-like building material, meaning they are hard, compact, and, well, good for building and carving. These quarries are a funny thing to consider here in the lowly Cote de Nuits Village. Their presence seems to somehow imply that either the compactness of the limestone or the presence of the industry itself may influence the hierarchical designation of the surrounding vines. But, since some of my favorite wines in all of Burgundy come from this area, I think it's time for us to let you in on a dirty little secret. There are quarries all over the sacred slopes of the Côte d'Or. We've alluded to this in past episodes, but we haven't quite had the guts to really get into it. Some of these quarries are ancient, such as the 11th century quarries designated by the vineyard name Terroir that we discussed last episode. But others are not as old as you might think. Some were active only decades ago, as opposed to centuries. From a terroir perspective, this man-made modification of the slope is kind of terrifying. Not only does this indicate that the shape of the slope has been altered, but that the geology has been altered by removing stone, and even more shockingly, by bringing in soil from other places. According to Françoise, this imported soil was often brought from the very, very bottom of the slope in order to fill in what had been taken away to allow the new vines to survive. In some cases, there's evidence of this human intervention in some very famous vineyards on both sides of the Côte d'Or, including many Grand Crus. To some Burgundian purists, this kind of feels like a betrayal. Like all of the stories of the monks and the perfectly faulted crus were all a big sham. And for a while, some producers have even done their best to keep these quarries as secret as possible. Today, however, I like to think that our understanding of terroir has evolved, and we're beginning to think of it as more of a complex system, a system that human beings are inextricably linked to. Burgundy is a place of remarkable geologic complexity, but it is also a place of deep, meaningful human history and tradition. It's this combination that makes the wine so exceptional, and this mysterious human impact on the terroirs themselves only makes each site that much more unique. And, if you still need convincing, another way to think of it is that even if we tried our very best to manipulate another piece of the slope in the exact same way as some historically quarried Grand Cru vineyard, we would still absolutely fail to recreate the sublime singularity of that Grand Cru. So, from now on, we're going to stop ignoring this human element of the terroir, and we're going to start asking others how they feel about it, and what they believe it means for the reality of terroir in Burgundy. As we drive into the village of Comblanchien, the first thing you notice is a massive, boxy, white mansion, proudly towering over the vines that surround it. And just behind this mansion is the humble home of Maison Thiriet, run by the charismatic Camille Thiriet. Daniel Jonas has known Camille since her first vintage in 2016 and has been a huge supporter since day one.
So, Camille I met in 2016, and I was very impressed. And what has struck me most about her wine is the determination of this woman to make the best wine possible without consideration of cost, because cost is so great and she's had to really struggle financially. She had big plans and she's doing phenomenally well. I think it's just extraordinary. What else can I tell you about her except that she's representative of a generation of young people who are really carving out a niche for themselves and creating almost like a second community in Burgundy. You have the community of the very, historic family domains, and then you have this subset of producers like Chanterev and like Camille Thiriet and so many others gaining a real following, which is so healthy for Burgundy. And you even see some of the more established historic domains dipping a toe in the water in that area of experimentation and really reinvigorating Burgundy. Burgundy is not sitting on its laurels. Burgundy is incredibly dynamic and innovative and alive today.
Camille and her partner, Matt Chittick, a Canadian and the former chef de cave for Domaine de Vilaine in Bouzeron, started Maison Thiriet with basically nothing, and have since produced some of the most exciting new wines in the Côte de Nuits.
The vineyard is just up this hill, just behind. You can see this little hill. It's just before the trees, right?
Okay. Camille is candid, with a charming, wry sense of humor and a hint of rebelliousness. She's firmly planted her roots in the Cote de Nuits Villages and works tirelessly to bring the perception of this area up to the level of quality she's come to understand from the vines. We drive up to the vineyard La Montagne in the village of Courgouloin to meet up with Camille. But just as we all arrive, the sky opens up and begins to downpour upon us.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's like just starting.
Yeah, it's really gonna happen.
Hospitably, Camille invites us back to the cellar to taste through the wines instead of wading through the mud.
Sweet. I was just thinking that for today, what I would like to do, if it's okay with you guys, it's only tasting Cote de Nuits Villages, as it's my flagship. And then we could even taste some 21, fresh. It can give you like an idea about the vintage also, and it's going to be interesting because it's about all plot in Comblanchien Courgouloin. So I think it makes sense. Alors.
Camille begins opening some bottles and gives us our first taste of Cote de Nuits Villages as she tells us how she came to Burgundy.
Alors, from the beginning, sorry, ladies first. I'm very impolite. I don't always forget. Then I was born in Paris, right? And I wanted to be a nez. I wanted to create perfumes because I always have been very sensitive about everything I smell, and I loved when I was younger walking in the street and recognizing the perfume of the woman, passing me. I love that. Yeah, but unfortunately I was really bad at science, chemicals. I figured out that it's going to be complicated for me to do this school to be a NE. But my family always been very passionate, not professional at all, but passionate about wine. And I found that, there is a similarity about creating a perfume, creating a wine. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to come to the wine school in Beaune in 2008. It was tough because I was surrounded by sons and daughters of famous winemakers around. They were born in this area, they knew a lot. I didn't know anything. It was hard. But I felt a real passion for this, super quickly actually.
Camille then went to Bordeaux to obtain a master's in wine marketing, then quickly returned to Burgundy, where she completed an extended stage with Nicolas Potel, the son of the great Gérard Potel of Domaine de la Pousse d'Or in Volnay.
He was making 75 different appellations. So I was tasting his wines all the time. And every time I tasted the Cote de Nuits Villages, I really found something special about this wine. But, he was making Vosne Romanée and beautiful other appellations. I already had in my head this idea of creating my domain. So one day I went to see Nico and I told him, Nico, I would like to create my domain. Alors, would you be keen to sell me some grapes? Because actually I figured out that your plot is the plot right in front of my house. So, that makes sense, and I love Cote de Nuits Villages, so would you be keen? And she was so nice. Nico is super generous. And he said, yes, no worries, I'm going to sell you 1 ton of grapes, and then you're going to start your first vintage. So we were making wine in the garage of my house, where you've been. But at this time, this house was abandoned. So because it was not occupied for a lot of years, they cut electricity, they cut water. So we made wine without electricity. It was fine. It was 1 ton of grapes to process, but still. So this is how we started to do pump overs with bucket, because no pump. This is why we started to press with basket press, no electricity. So the conclusion is it's not easy, but it's possible. Mm-hmm. And I loved this approach of winemaking. And slowly, we made a little bit more wine, and now we are about, I would say, 13,000 bottles average. Mm-hmm. And so also, I bought some lands, some vineyards. Alors, you know that in Burgundy it's complicated for a lot of reasons, because it's expensive. It's very expensive. And then, I'm totally independent. When you buy grapes, you're not independent. You totally depend of mood, weather, a lot of stuff. So it's now my partner is just starting to work with me, but another time it's going to be complicated for a little bit of years. But it's fine, when you do your passion, I guess it's the most important. Also, we are not rich, but we drink good wines with all of our friends around, so that's the most important.
We follow Camille into a small barrel room where we taste the very young 2021 vintage. This conversation took place in November of 2021, so we'll be among the first to taste these recently barreled down wines.
Regarding the Pinot, here we're going to taste from Corgaulois first. Alors, guys, be indulgent. It's, you can hear they are doing the malolactic fermentation, right? So it's babies. But at least it will give you an idea about the different terroirs. It's so expressive, this vintage. Alors, that's La Montagne. Alors, La Montagne is, where we were parked? So that's 60 years old vineyard. I'm going to take a little bit more. This one, first time actually I'm processing those grapes. And I'm going to have those grapes normally forever, as I'm going to have the fermage on those lands. So I'm so excited. It's the first vintage. Regarding the vinification, 70% this stem, 30% old bunch. It's a clear fruit. That's the typicity of the 21 vintage. It's super floral, super expressive. It's pretty, it's not dense and concentrated. Like the last vintages, they were more hot, tu vois? And so, I don't know, I didn't have plenty of vintages behind me, but I feel that it's a classical, I would say, I don't know. We're gonna taste les retraits. So now we will be back in Comblanchien.
Really good.
You like this one last time you came to. Les retraits, I don't know. Les retraits is so specific. So it's interesting because this year I tried on 2 cuvées, really just infusion. So it means that I was just doing like little pump overs most of the time with buckets, and I was really playing with the temperature, right? I don't have temperature control, but I have heaters and I have those cover around the tanks. And when I felt it was going a little bit too low, then I went on the top of the tank and just slowly crush the top of the tank, just not to extract, just to diffuse the sugar and give some food, to the yeast and continue and give a little, just to have a little bit more of time, right? But that's it. Now we stay in Comblanchien, right? And we taste aux montagnes. Alors, aux montagnes is literally just in front of the house. Here. Okay. Aux montagnes is very important to us as it's the first wine we ever made in 2016, thanks to Nico Potel. And to be really fair, it's a terroir of a premier cru. I'm sure about that. You really have to check this terroir. And it's not very deep at all, maybe 30 centimeters, something like that, maybe more. We are in Comblanchien, so a lot of calcaire, limestone. And the wines, the reds from Comblanchien, always felt like super fresh. Even in warm vintages, but because of this terroir with a lot of different stones, the wine is not heavy. Alors, it's funny because, to be honest, guys, this year, some of the vineyard, there were a lot of oidium and, we were between 16 to 18 people to sort the grapes. I feel that this is so much more work, but at the end of the day, what you have after in your tank, it's the real reflect of the vintage and the terroir. The wines are clean, they're pure, and it worth the work. Yeah.
There's just not enough of them.
Et voilà. All right, now we're going to taste 2019.
Okay. We begin to taste through some bottled examples of the same wines.
I love Les Retraits. Les Retraits is always super specific, and it's a wine that you can find blind tasting. I feel it's super easy to find blind tasting. This strawberry and pepper, like smashed strawberries, it's very typical of the Retrait. Did you ever taste Jérôme Galéran Retrait?
I had some last night.
Ah, cool. Yeah. Which vintage?
17.
17, sorry. Oh, yeah, it's good, 17, huh? It's very good. Very, very good.
But as we continue to taste, the conversation wanders away from the delicious wines in our glass. Sometimes the best tastings in Burgundy allow you to stop analyzing every detail of the wine and to focus on who you're with and the stories they want to tell you.
Also, I always say I don't want people to have the idea of me making natural wine because I don't know what it means. To be really honest, I still don't know what it means. What I can say to people is like, I don't add anything in my wines, never. That's why I found it weird, people who say I'm making natural wines. No, en fait, you make wine. You make normal wines. Yeah, some people are making wine with a lot of stuff. Yeast, tannin powder, a lot of stuff, like acid. But like here, we never add anything. We do use a little bit of sulfur, But most of the time, not after malolactic, just before bottling. I have this stuff where I like wine when they are not deviant. I like when it's pure. Yeah, I don't like too much when it's funky, let's say. So I put a low amount, I will say 0.25 for the whites and less than 0.20 for the reds. So it's very, very low. It's just for, I export a lot, and I like my wines when they arrive at the other side of the world to be okay, to be protected. That's it.
Though she doesn't come from a winemaking family and is relatively new to Burgundy, she has the respect of many of the most respected domaines in the region. She's close with the Patel family and even worked a harvest at Domaine de la Romanie-Conti, where she met longtime winemaker Bernard Noblet, who retired in 2017.
Just for picking, just picking the grapes. But eventually, at the end of the day, I was trying to sneak around and going on the sorting table. And this is where I met Bernard Noblet, and I explained to Bernard my project. I explained to him, I didn't have, any pipette. I had nothing. I had a corkscrew, and that's it. So, no, but seriously, when I started, I had nothing. And I had, 1,000 euro on my bank account, and that's it, right? So it was whoa. Maybe he thought you're a bit crazy, maybe. But I told him that I had a huge emotion on Gérard Potel's wine, and I'm super curious about Old Bunch, but I'm super scared about trying to do 100% Old Bunch because I don't know how it works. And he told me, if you want, we can meet during the year. You come at my place and we're just gonna talk. And so I'm yeah, sure. But thinking he's gonna forget and it will never happen. But let's see. It happens. So, Noblet family made a lot of different millésimes at the DRC. Alors, that's the reason why I asked him about Old Bunch. And this is how I jumped to the Old Bunch, because he gave me some tips. If not, I wouldn't do it because I was too scared to screw up one of my cuvées. And also, financially talking, I couldn't take the risk. That was impossible. So yeah. And now he's coming every year during harvest. And he's sorting for hours. He's for hours on the sorting table, super minutieux and appliqué and constant focus and discreet, humble. He's calm. And I need people like that around me because I'm not calm at all. Trying to think about everything, and he calmed me down also. Very, 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 very smart. Very smart. Also, what I love about him is when he was talking to me about Old Bunch, he was not, super technical. At the beginning, he was talking to me about cooking food, and it really talks to me because I love cooking too. And when I cook, I always cook with instinct. I don't follow recipe. I just smell and taste, adjust, and again. He worked the same way. He has a lot of knowledgeable, of course, a lot more. But the approach is, I feel, very simple. You don't need, crazy winery with crazy technology of your tank can talk to you and I don't know, but now you can see crazy stuff, right? So come back to basics. It's good. So I have no choice. So hopefully it's good. Alors now you have a good example of 3 plots on the same village, and they are very, very different wines. Ça, c'est la conclusion.
We thank Camille for her time and head out into the slightly drier skies toward the village of Nuits-Saint-Georges. The appellation of Nuits-Saint-Georges is another large and complicated one. It begins in the village of Prémaux-Prissé and extends north to the southern edge of Von Romane. The appellation of Nuits-Saint-Georges is often split into 3 zones. The southern end comprises most of the village of Prémaux. These wines tend to be of the softer, more graceful expression of Nuits-Saint-Georges. The core of Nuits-Saint-Georges begins just around its famed namesake, the Les Saint-Georges vineyard. and extends into the village itself. These are the structured, burly wines Nuits-Saint-Georges is most famous for. Finally, north of the village and bordering Von Romane, the wines tend to soften up again, as if they're gradually transitioning into their velvety, luxurious neighbor to the north. The last vineyard of the Cote de Nuits Villages is Les Retraits, which we've just tasted with Camille. And just beyond it, the first vineyard in Nuits-Saint-Georges is also the first premier cru of the Côte de Nuits, Frédéric Meunier's historic monopole, Clos de la Maréchale.
Maréchale is 9.86 hectares. It has not changed since Napoleon's map of it.
Though it feels like we're within a relatively unknown part of the Côte, we're surrounded by famous monopole vineyards owned by some great names.
Is this Clos de l'Arlo?
That is Clos de l'Arlo.
Wow. It's so, I mean, it is visually stunning.
Yeah, it's an oddball in
odd.
topography.
Yeah.
There's Meunier's Clos de la Maréchale and the Clos de l'Arlo monopole of Domaine de l'Arlo, formerly run by the legendary Jean-Pierre de Smet. Domaine de l'Arlo proudly announces on their website that this vineyard was built on the site of a former quarry, giving it its unique amphitheater shape and diverse microclimates. We begin our exploration of the southern side of Nuits-Saint-Georges with Charles Lachaux, the rapidly rising star of Domaine Arnaud Lachaux.
Nuits-Saint-Georges, exciting.
It's new to see people happy to go to Nuits-Saint-Georges. I think with global warming, the wines are getting better in Nuits-Saint-Georges. They are riper, the tannins are not as firm. Yes, I think, for example, at the estate first, Nuits-Saint-Georges is taking more and more attention because of the wines, and we have quite a big surface. The estate in total is 14 hectares, so the total surface on Nuits-Saint-Georges would be almost half of the domain. Wow. So it's not small, it's not just one or two vineyards, because the vineyards we are about to see are both quite large. So it's really a key village for us, and since a long time it has always been. They are all vineyards we own in the family since a long time.
Charles is based in Von Romane, but has vines here in Nuits-Saint-Georges, as well as in Chambon-Musigny, so we'll be checking in with him and his long list of ambitious innovations over the next several episodes. Charles is young and hungry, and has wasted no time pushing the limits of both farming and vinification since he took over from his father in 2012. Neither his efforts nor his wines have gone unnoticed, and sadly, these beautiful wines have already begun to leave the stratosphere of affordability. We begin just outside the village of Nuits-Saint-Georges, in the structured core of the appellation.
Here we are with the first vineyard. Nuits-Saint-Georges, premier cru, les Procès. So Nuits-Saint-Georges, premier cru, les Procès. You can say it's a very classic archetype of Nuits-Saint-Georges. It's the southern part. As you can see, we are below the old quarries. We have many above. The top is quite steep to see the amount of rock there is there. One year the soil is a bit thicker, but you have a good blend between clay and the rocks, in my opinion. But it's really the archetype with this thickness of soil. Here, if you don't take care much of the way you work, you can really easily end up with high quantity crop, which drives you to extract, to have some depth in the wine and make the stereotype of Nuits-Saint-Georges.
So structured, tannin.
So structured, tannin, black. So the way we work now, 100% all cluster in those appellations with warm vintages. On the paper, it's supposed to be undrinkable. It should be structured, black, vegetal. Everything why people don't want to drink Nuits-Saint-Georges. Working the same way the vineyards. We try to work a bit like the old-fashioned way. If you want, we can go have a look. So at the domain, as you can see, we don't till anymore. We don't mow as well. And
though Charles has certainly been the most vocal, he's actually the second farmer to attempt no-till farming in the Côte d'Or. The first being J.J. Morel in Saint-Aubin, who we spoke about in our last episode. In just a few short years, Charles's confidence has quickly brought this conversation to the world stage. One of several risks of no-till farming is that the surrounding vegetation can grow into the fruiting zone of the vine, increasing humidity and therefore disease pressure. As a result, people are looking for ways to cut or crimp the tall grasses, in this case without tilling or compacting the soil.
For the soil, it's quite much inspired by what Mimi Castile has been doing. and from Roagna as well in Piedmont. And it wasn't common in Burgundy. So the problem of working this way, with the density we have, and in reds, is that there is no feedback. Nobody has ever done it, or solidol that there is no advices, no way to how to do it well, how to have less concurrency, or how to manage. So now we'll try another thing which is not common in Burgundy. It's rouleau.
Roller?
Yeah, but what we were using before is the rouleau faca. It works here, but the problem is between the vines, because Burgundy vines are low, the vineyards are narrow, and it's in high density. So the tool that really pinches well the grass, they need to be big and heavy. Everything that cannot enter Burgundy's vineyards. So now we'll have this year we'll try some small rolls in the middle, and below maybe nothing. There is no ready tool. It's something we think about for this spring.
What's the period where the grass is really a competition problem?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
And I think the more it goes, maybe the less we'll have competition, because the same with the no trimming, the roots of the vines, they grew more and more from year to year, so they go deeper and deeper. So maybe at some point we'll have less and less concurrency.
I'm guessing it's too, the grass is too vigorous to just mow it.
No, but the problem is that if you mow, the grass will need to regrow, and it's when it does concurrency to the vineyard. So the aim of pinching it is you wait for it to be tall enough, it flowers, so it seeds itself. By pinching it, you do a mulch, so it covers the soil, it makes a protection from the sun. And this, with all the diversity we have, because the more you don't plow, the more you have bacteria and insects and everything, they will be able to quickly turn that to carbon and humus. So we have a better cycle. It works with the soil are working in a much better way from. We have not been doing it for 10 years, but in 2 or 3 years we can really see the difference. We'll see how it goes from year to year, but we're trying to find a certain natural balance back and to do the less. I think it's a way we'll be able to express more the vintages difference and even more the appellations difference, as everything is worked exactly the same way in the vineyards or in the cellar at the domain.
You must be really able to see differences in cover crop growth.
Completely. That's where we are different, because now the cover crops are very fashionable. A lot of people are doing it. There are more and more. But here we don't see anything. It's just what grows. And it naturally does it better than us. I think if there are some species growing, it's because they need to. That's where I'm quite different with the people who do seed cover crops. It's something I really don't want to do.
We return back to the southern edge of Nuits-Saint-Georges, within the village of Prémaux, to the Premier Cru vineyard Clos de Corvée-Paget.
So we were in Nuits-Saint-Georges Premier Cru Les Procès, and we go to our second Nuits-Saint-Georges Premier Cru, which is Clos de Corvée-Paget. It's our most southern vineyard. It's at the entrance of Prémaux Prissé. It's quite a special plot. In terms of age of vines, the wines it delivers. I think it's one of Paul's favorite in the cellar.
Yep.
It is one of my favorite too, because it breaks all this preconceived idea. It's a kind of wine that has always been. If you talk with people who, it has always been a special appellation. And yeah, it's just the beginning of the monopoly. You see here it's Clos de Forêt-Saint-Georges from Domaine de Lachaux, 0.20 hectares. So it goes until the path there. After the path you have Clos de Corvée from Rock, which is about 5 hectares. Actually, I have to take that. Wait.
Just next door to Charles's Clos de Corvée-Paget is the monopole Clos de Corvée of the natural wine North Star, Domaine Pure Rock, founded in 1988 by the late Henri Frédéric Rock.
Here it's Clos de Corvée-Paget, and then you have Clos Saint-Marc, which is another monopole from Domaine Patron-Surion, which is here. And then you have Clos de Lachaux, and then Clos de la Maréchale.
Yeah.
So it's really the part of the monopoles. I think there's something in common with all those ones. I think it's not because we are here, but when you taste it, when you drink it, this area from the Clos des Forêts until Clos de la Maréchale is one of the most enjoyable parts for Nuits-Saint-Georges. It's always make quite approachable wines, delicate, but they are not weak. They're quite sexy, if we can say. I think the promo side is really the best part of Nuits-Saint-Georges. So here it's way more, we can go until the top because there the geology is very interesting. From the 2/3, we change a lot, and we can see already in the rows, you see the change of colors of the grass and everything. Here, it's more classic, like in the process, with a lot of small gravels and clay. And from the middle 2/3, we start to have some sand and marls and a lot of limestone.
And clover.
Yeah. Here, we start to have a lot, and the Bourgogne we have, which is covered in clover, it's just below this way. It's Grand Chaillot, and it's almost 100% clover.
Yeah.
Pardon?
C'est différent, la végétation.
The texture?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something I like in our vineyards. Even in summer, you always have this sensation like walking into the forest. Because we try to avoid the maximum the compaction.
It's incredible the difference between here and then there.
T'as vu?
The vegetation just changes like
you can
abruptly.
radically see the difference in the soil.
Yeah.
And the more you go up, the more you see it.
We have a lot of sigur in here, which is what Socrates was poisoned with, I believe. Yeah.
So be careful not to drink too much Grand Pagé in the future. Or just enough to get stronger against it.
Yes.
And you see, radically the grass is way lost color from here.
Maybe.
You see how the grass changes, the colors and the height of it. Now we have a lot of diversity, but not just about bacteria and insects, about larger formats as well. So we have many more holes like this, and with blaireaux, with about rabbits. We have many more animals getting to the vineyards on a year basis.
Is that okay?
Yes, it is, because they will bring even more diversity and it's a good balance back. The thing is that if the neighbors don't start to let some grass grow and everything, when you have a very dry year like 2020, there's drought, they come to your vineyard for the shade, for the grass, and when the grass is dry, they eat some grapes. So if everybody starts to do it, it will be fine because everybody will have a little bit eaten and you don't mind. When you are alone, sometimes we can take the big hits because of that.
As we continue to walk up the slope, we finally come upon a big pile of rocks.
Oh no, a geologist's dream.
Comment?
We'll lose her for... No.
Well, I know. The biggest problem with all this grass is you can't see the rocks.
Yeah. For you, it's a problem. Now, if it develops more and more, you will have to do more biology to discover the herbs, so you will know which kind of grass is there.
Yeah, exactly.
So you see from how it's changing here. It's getting lighter, we have more marls and more sand and even more gravels.
You feel it just walking on it,
Yeah.
you feel the
It gets a
lightness
bit
of the soil.
more...
Here, but in the middle,
look.
c'est sableux comparé à...
On voit bien là les...
It feels like crunchier.
Oh yeah.
And you see it makes a bit more compaction, you have a bit of mousse.
Mousse. I like that.
Mousse?
Mousse.
Moss.
Oh, I thought he was describing like chocolate mousse.
No. The texture could be...
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. That's why you can see this kind of soil when it's dry. It becomes like rock. That's why we have this kind of mousse. And it's so dry, so compact, we can really see there are less herbs growing and there's less diversity. So it will take more time to have a better balance here. So maybe this kind of area, we would need to seed a little by hand to help some covers to develop and to reinstall a certain diversity because it gets too compact and it's too hard for some species to grow there compared to the rest of the vineyard.
We break open a few pieces of the hard, sharp, fine-grained pink Prémaux limestone before heading back to the car.
What is the diagnostic?
It's very, we even like recorded the sound because it sounds really distinct as you break it. Yeah, it's kind of like sharp sound, like kind of a high-pitched ting. And the rock itself is like really, really hard and sharp. Like, I'll ask the boss, Françoise, but I think that's the Prémaux.
I think it's the Prémaux like the... And just after you...
We leave Charles for now with a promise to find him again in his vines in Von Romane soon. Charles is a fascinating producer to watch, and his light, ethereal wines perfectly embody the style of the moment. But we're in Nuits-Saint-Georges, and are ready to experience some more classic expressions of this structured and powerful village. We're heading into the vineyards with Antoine Gouges of Domaine Henri Gouges. Over time, the name Gouges has been synonymous with the classic austere structure of Nuits-Saint-Georges, with many collectors and drinkers saying not to even think about opening a bottle for at least 20 years.
So we just walk a few hundred meters. Okay. And we will be at the limit of the village from Nuits-Saint-Georges to the appellation Saint-Georges and Chêne-Carteau at the top. Okay. And after, it's the village of Premaux-Prissay.
Domaine Gouges is an old domain with some very significant history in Burgundy. Antoine's great-grandfather, Henri Gouges, was one of the first domains to begin domain bottling their own wines back in 1933, and along with the Marquis Sem d'Angerville, was a leader in the movement to establish the first AOC regulations in Burgundy, protecting the integrity of the terroirs from the large negociant houses at the time, who were doing some suspicious blending with wines from outside the region. Domaine Henri Gouges has long represented perhaps the most classic expression of Nuits-Saint-Georges.
On your right, it's appellation Premier Cru Chêne-Carteau, and on the left, it's the appellation Les Saint-Georges Premier Cru. So most of the Premier Cru in this part, the village, the south, they are situated between 240 and 260 meters. So you can see the small wall at the bottom. That's where I start. And after you are in Nuits-Saint-Georges Village, and after the National Road, Bourgogne.
Today, the domaine has been taken over by two young cousins, Gregory and Antoine, who are faced with the challenge of respecting the history of the domaine while bringing in their own modern personalities into the wines.
Chêne-Carteau is quite different Premier Cru from all the other one we have in the middle of the hill. It's a much lighter soil, more sandy, and we can walk a bit if you want to look at the soil. And it's very steep, so we had to put grass in the vineyard to avoid the erosion. So the bottom is a bit heavier, but more you go up, more it's kind of sandy. You can find some bit of red clay, balls of red clay.
This is becoming our morning workout.
Yeah. And keeps you warm.
Yeah. And the view, for the view. That's good, good exercise. Huh?
Just got a little steeper.
And you can see it's a bit of gravel. Sometimes it's gravel and sometimes it's really sandy, grey sand.
Yeah, it's really...
Grey and yellow sand.
Really angular gravels.
Antoine tells us that these gravelly soils are very calcareous, which reminds me of the Gres-Litay soils we saw in Beaune with Françoise Vannier.
There is no many vineyards in the south of Nuits where it's so much steep. You will see
There's a small combe just above where we're standing now, the Combe de Vallereau. But the major combe of Nuits-Saint-Georges is the Combe de Mazan, just to the north of us. This is one of the largest combes in the Côte de Nuits. This large of a valley has certainly produced and ejected a good amount of alluvial material. However, the sizable village of Nuits-Saint-Georges sits on top of most of this alluvial material, instead of vineyards, which may be why we don't get many soft, round alluvial characteristics in these wines.
So you have Combe de Vallereau over there, you can see it's a small combe, but that have a big impact on what happened in the bottom here. You can see very, very light with very good structure. And when we pull off the vine, we work the soil at, I don't know, maybe 40 centimeters, and there is no rocks, no big stones at all. Chêne-Carteau, it's much more lighter, that's wine with finesse and quite approachable in the young vintage. It's a lighter wine compared to Saint-Georges, which is really a serious guy.
We walk back down the slope and into the famous Les Saint-Georges vineyard.
This is Saint-Georges. So Saint-Georges, it's the best appellation of Nuits, the more complex and the more full-bodied in terms of wine. And Saint-Georges is 7 hectares.
And how old are these vines?
Those ones are 5 years old, so it's a very young wine. For the moment, we don't blend it in the cuvée.
Okay.
It's a bit
yeah, we're
round.
starting.
It's not very angular.
Little pieces of rounded things.
And you can see at the bottom the vegetation, the grass, they change a little bit. They are bigger. So it's a bit richer here.
Yeah, I mean they're young, but like they're pretty.
Yeah, they're quite healthy. Yeah. Yeah, I'm very happy with this plantation. So yes, here you can really see there is a change of the hill over there, and the orientation is different. So basically here it's always riper because the orientation, the inclination is great for the maturity. And that's where the soil are more complex.
We hop back in the car and head to the next Premier Cru vineyard, Les Vaucrans.
So you can turn here to the reverse.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact the vineyard of Nuits is quite big. We do 700 hectares.
Oh wow.
And half of it is in Nuits-Saint-Georges. And there is 43 different Premier Cru. So it's quite complex. You can park on the left just here. We'll have a look at Les Vaucrans. It's an old stone carrier here.
Yeah,
You can see it.
Like really old.
Really old.
Cool.
It's work by hand. Yeah. So this vineyard is called Les Vaucrans. It's coming from Vaurien, which is French old speaking. That means worth nothing. Because it's always very low production, and it's for the grapes. It's perfect place. It's more stony.
Yeah.
More stone this side of one way, and we do about the same yield here than in Chêne-Carteau and Saint-Georges, about 20 hectoliters per hectare. The soil is a bit heavier here, so probably more red clay. Worth nothing, but do some of the best wine from Nuits.
Yeah.
So in this part with Saint-Georges, Vaucrans and Lachaux, it's considered as the best place for Premier Cru.
We're immediately confronted by an array of rocks scattered throughout the vineyard, just waiting to be broken open. We all scour the ground looking for interesting-looking specimens as we make our way toward the quarry wall ahead of us. The trick here, though, is that we don't know whether these rocks came from the limestone beneath our feet or if they were brought here later by others.
Oh. See this?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's silex.
Silex?
I think so. See, it's so smooth. And then this is limestone. See how it scratches it?
Yeah.
And this.
Okay. Very hard one. Silex.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
You want to break this one?
I mean, I always do.
Yeah.
I like it. That was a good one. Yeah, this is most of that, like either Premo or Comblanchian limestone. We're seeing in a lot of places, so like really fine grained.
So you think you pick the only one with silex, or?
You always have to find a couple pieces to be sure.
Yeah.
Soon, Antoine picks up my hammer, excited to begin breaking rocks open himself.
You want me to? I can do it if you want.
Yeah?
Yeah.
This is always a good sign.
Okay, quartz.
That was a good one.
Now I'm searching silex. No.
As we get closer to the quarry wall, we can see the clear layers of the bright white Comblanchian limestone. These layers record oscillating ocean conditions, changing directions of water currents, and evidence of sea life from 164 million years ago. A giant tree balances at the top of the quarry wall above us, and we admire how its roots intertwine with the geologic layers in front of us, a metaphor for the vine roots just below our feet.
So you can imagine maybe they extract all this part.
Yeah.
So you can see the curve.
Yeah.
And they probably put some soil back.
Ooh.
It's muddy.
Water pooling, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably straight on the rock here, so no good drainage.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
What do you see?
You can see little cross bedding.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, kind of like ripples or like little limestone dunes. See really small ones here. And just little ripples. Shows moving water.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, like.
Yeah, you can see. Amazing how the roots
Yeah.
went. Yeah. Dig.
Yeah.
We head back down to the car, where we'll discover one more vineyard before returning to the cellar to taste.
Last chance for Silex.
So disappointed. Before even seeing it.
No.
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 Sorry. I know. We found this one piece of silex.
We arrive at the last vineyard, lower on the slope and a little closer to the village of Nuits-Saint-Georges. The Premier Cru monopole, Clos de Saint-Georges. Yet another vineyard built onto an old quarry. The Gouges family believes this quarry is more ancient and may date back to the monks of the Citeaux. Geologically, it also seems to be exploiting the slightly older pink Premo limestone, instead of the white Comblanchian limestone we've just seen in Vaucran.
And we can look at the vineyard just after there. We found a lot of stones over there. Compared to the other side, Vaucran, and it's much more stony.
Yeah. What is the name?
Clos de, with an S. Porret. Porret, it's P-O-R-R-E-T-S. Saint-Georges.
You make a blanc from here too?
Yes, we do, not every year, but we do one barrel every 2 or 3 years. It's very small production. In fact, the Perrier you tried is made from Pinot Blanc. And originally, the Pinot Blanc comes from this plot.
In 1930, Henri Gouges discovered a branch of white grapes on a vine of Pinot Noir in this vineyard and decided to replicate it. A mutation now known as Pinot Gouges, aka Pinot Blanc.
My great-grandfather, he was son of a grafter. So he had the idea to grafted it and to replanted it. So he did a nursery in the corner of Clos des Porrets, which is over there. And after, in the 40s, 50s, they replanted the plot up the hill, close to the building you see, to make La Perrier. So 100% from Pinot Blanc. This one is really pink.
Oh, yeah. Ah. Found another one.
Silex?
Yeah.
Ah, cool.
We had two.
So we have a bit of Silex.
Something.
Now that we've found this silex in multiple different places, we can start to consider that it might potentially be a significant component of the terroir. My guess is that it comes from far up the combe and has been washed down during large storms. There's also some similar, mysterious silex to the north in Gevrey-Chambertin, another village in the Côte de Nuits with a very large combe.
All right, more.
More here?
Yeah. Interesting.
What does it mean?
I don't know.
Some more?
More? Yeah. It's actually like, starts to feel like you're not making it up.
Yeah.
We hop back into the car and head into the village of Nuits-Saint-Georges and into the cellar. As we descend into the cellar for our tasting, we immediately see a wall of old bottles, labeled with vintages that don't even seem possible.
Are these for real?
1943.
Yeah.
1924.
It's real one.
1919.
Yeah, we had the luck. The great-grandfather kept some and hid some during the war, so we still have few samples.
That's crazy. I thought they were numbers for something else at first. It's just like,
Yeah.
it doesn't compute that they're right there.
And my great-grandfather was one of the first to do bottling at the domain.
Daniel Jonas once explained to me that during this time, the popular style of Burgundy was actually much bigger, more tannic wines than we're used to today. Because Gouges was one of only a few domains to begin bottling their own wines, their robust style not only became synonymous with the time, but with their name and the village of Nuits-Saint-Georges as a whole. And as we've just seen, their best vineyards are within the most structured core of the appellation, full of both hard limestone rocks and powerful clays. Here's Daniel Jonas.
So Gouges is a particular style that I think has evolved a bit. The Gouges style has historically been a very long-lived wine. Wines that are a bit inaccessible. The door doesn't open easily and welcome you in, or did not, I should say, in the older style from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s. And if you're patient enough, and I've had very old examples of it, they're absolutely glorious. So in a way, this is like old style Burgundy, or was, I think, with the new generation of Gregory and Antoine, are making a slightly more softer style.
So with the soil in the south of Nuits, as I tell you, that they make really wine with big tannins, big structure. So we kind of work them very gentle during harvest and vinification to be the lighter as possible in the extraction and get a finesse of tannins.
Yeah, more approachable. And that's it. And I think that they've done it really well because they've done it in a way that retains the, if you like to say, the Gouges style, but you do remark and say, wow, this is a little bit more approachable.
We begin tasting through the wines, including many of the vineyards we've just visited and a few others. The first wines are bottle samples.
So this is Chêne Carteau Premier Cru. The first one we visited this morning. So very steep and fresher, very fresh and a bit atypical from the south of Nuits because the soil are lighter in this steep.
Do you own vines in the northern part of the appellation?
We own only one vineyard. That we will try now. Chéniaux is a 40 years old vineyard.
I mean, this is a very, very different wine. It feels like it's from a different
area.
Yeah, different area. To me, it feels it's like the softer, friendlier side of Nuits-Saint-Georges. Yeah, like
is north. Yeah, exactly. Probably the tannins are thinner, and the wine are probably more approachable early.
The rest of the wines we taste from barrel.
And the last one is Saint-Georges. My great-grandfather, Henri Gouges, he was very involved with the creation of the appellation. He spent a lot of time in Paris to defend the appellation everywhere in France.
As we've mentioned before, there was a huge movement in the late 20s and early 1930s to build a system of appellations, or AOCs, to protect the integrity of Burgundy's terroirs. Two of the strongest advocates for this movement were Henri Gouges and Sem d'Angerville of Domaine Marquis d'Angerville in Volnay. Their goal in building the INAO and AOC system in Burgundy was for the good of the region, and both felt that any attempts at lobbying for their own benefit would be counterproductive to their purpose. At the time, Henri Gouges was the mayor of Nuits-Saint-Georges and the largest landholder of its best vineyard, Saint-Georges, and Sem d'Angerville owned the great monopole Clos de Duc. They decided not to recommend any Grand Crus in their own villages, though many people believe to this day that there are some vineyards that merit the designation. Today, Saint-Georges is owned by 13 different domains who have collectively begun the process to potentially elevate it to Grand Cru status.
do you think it should be a Grand Cru?
It's better to have a great Premier Cru. We work on it since a few years to have it as a Grand Cru, and we ask to the Institute of National Appellation to consider that it could be a Grand Cru. So we work on it actually, and maybe it will, maybe it will in 10 years, I don't know. It's take a lot of time with the French administration. So we hope so. It could be great for the village to have a Grand Cru and could pull up the appellation. But we are happy. Anyway, this vineyard is already known as a great wine.
I feel like this is very well grounded. Like it has very firm footing. It's not as lean and straight as some of the others. It has some more like breadth to it, but with a really, really grounded.
It's a bit larger. But we say in Nuits-Saint-Georges there is a bit of every plot from Nuits-Saint-Georges. It's a blend of everything.
In the past, historically, when do you think was the perfect time to drink these wines?
In the past, you needed 10 to 15 years before to open a bottle. I still have old clients that say, I start to open the 99, they just start to open. So sometimes 20, and we really evolve and change the style. Even if we want to keep doing terroir wine and wine with a good potential of aging, we change because for me it's more my taste and the wine I like. I prefer a bit more finesse, primary aroma. I think there is interest for Nuits-Saint-Georges because quality really upgrades since 10, 15 years, and we have a real personality of terroir.
Why do you think in the past 10 years the quality's improved?
Because of the climate and the producer involved a lot. Nuits-Saint-Georges is considered as a cold city, so when we have a good phenolic ripeness, we have finer tannins, and they make the wine more accessible, more approachable.
Before we leave, we take another look at the wall of bottled history on display.
It's a document of history.
Yes, when you know that in the 40s nearly everything was done by women, there was no men around, and they were harvesting under the snow. Yeah, there is a lot of history.
Yeah, and saving bottles because they meant something.
But you can see all the good vintages are nearly finished.
Clearly, Gouges is one of the most important domains today, which represents the history of the village and where it's headed. And while there are many other great domains who are proud to make wines from Nuits-Saint-Georges, not many are actually based in the village.
The three most notable great producers would be that Chevillon, Gouges, and Faiveley as far as style and notoriety. A lot of people own vineyards in Nuits-Saint-Georges, but these are, residents of the village and probably the most important spokespeople for the village of Nuits-Saint-Georges, the appellation. Robert Chevillon, large holdings in the best Premier Cru, whether it be Vaucrin or Proulier or Les Saint-Georges. They have Caille and Chéniaux also. When I taste Chevillon with a little age, I'm tasting what I consider to be a quintessential Burgundy. Now, with age, I'm talking maybe a 20 to 30-year-old wine that has developed the aromas of smoke, a hint of cedar, tobacco, like black fruit, mushroom, all those aromas that you find so beguiling in a great mature Burgundy. Faiveley style also is known as a pretty powerful, and they've made huge changes with Erwan and Eve Faiveley, and the style of the wines is really delicious today. I think the change has been even more dramatic than at Gouges, where I think that the wines at Faiveley were really needed also a very long time to reveal themselves. Whereas today, I think that I noticed a change fairly quickly when the direction of the company changed. And I mean, they have tremendous appellations, not just in Nuits-Saint-Georges, that's where they're located, but between Gevrey and Gevrey-Chambertin and even as far south as Pouligny-Montrachet. But Faiveley is based in Nuits-Saint-Georges, and that's what they're known for.
I just hope it's going to be open, and it's not. Alors, wait for me here. I'll check my contact.
Okay.
We were lucky enough to spend a good amount of time with Erwan Faiveley of Domaine Joseph Faiveley, the major negociant house operating out of Nuits-Saint-Georges. We actually spent most of our time in their incredible parcels on the hill of Corton, and won't speak about those today. But Erwan also generously provided us with a vertical tasting of Les Saint-Georges.
It will dry out. No worries. Tac. Et voilà.
And I thought it would be interesting to go back a little bit in the past. My father, he left to Switzerland. Back then I was 25, in charge of the winery. Didn't know much about wine. And over 2 years, I tried to see the do's and the don'ts. I spent a lot of time in all the villages here. And I was quite blown away to see how transparent and how welcoming people were. My father was very keen on making big, structured, quite tannic wine. I like wines with a more feminine and delicate structure. So what I suggest, we'll start with the oldest, and we will move to the youngest. Okay? Yeah. 2000. So 2000 was not considered as a great vintage in Burgundy. Yet, I believe my father really did a good job in 2000.
It is so tannic. There's so much structure.
Wow. I found too much.
I would guess that it was much, much younger. It's not tired at all. It's
so tannic. But it's so tannic. It's really tannic.
We then move on to 2005, the year Erwan took over the domaine, but before he'd begun to put his own mark on the wines.
2005 was a great vintage. I had doubts at some point that it was the great vintage that everybody talked about. And now I'm not so sure I have doubts anymore.
Then on to 2010.
2010, great vintage. For me, it ends the 2000.
This tasting does a great job of demonstrating how the personality of a terroir can persist through changes in style.
The following decade is pretty cool. It's pretty nice.
And on to 2015.
2015, great vintage. When we harvested that vintage, it was the acme of what we could do.
As the vintages get younger and warmer, the wines start to embrace you, let you in on some of their secrets, while still embodying the big, muscular structure you'd expect of Nuits-Saint-Georges.
I think it's a great vintage, but damn, I would have never imagined we would have had such a series of great vintage. As I said, Nuits-Saint-Georges is the greatest vineyard of Nuits-Saint-Georges South.
And finally, 2020 from barrel.
Let's try a few 20s?
Please, yeah.
Allez. Nuits-Saint-Georges. It's really surprising how we have managed to make such balanced wines considering the weather we've had. It's a miracle.
Erwan was generous enough to caravan these bottles and give them to us to take home. So over the coming days, we had the opportunity to watch each bottle open up and blossom, making us remember once again that no matter how grand a wine is, it's made to be drunk, experienced, and listened to. We step out into the village of Nuits-Saint-Georges, once again beneath a blanket of rain. The village itself is a significant one, with shops, restaurants, and even a little train station. We haven't managed our time well today, so we sneak into a little dive bar in the center of town called Au Bar, with shockingly tasty green salads. Before running off to our next stop, we pop into the patisserie Olivier Bourreau, a favorite of Paul's stepfather, the wonderful Russell Hone, to pick him up something sweet. Finally, we make our way to the vineyards in the north of Nuits. Just about everyone we've spoken to has said that these vineyards are a totally different world from the proud, austere wines we've tasted today. And every single person has commented that these wines seem to share some sort of genetic link to their neighbor, the holy ground of Van Romane. In order to get through the village, you have to cross a small creek that flows from the Côme de Maison, the great big combe that sits behind the village of Nuits-Saint-Georges. It's one of the largest combes in the Côte d'Or, and this little stream creates a clear, physical boundary between the wines from the south of Nuits and the wines in the north. As it turns out, this is a rare case where the tastes of the wines have revealed the secrets buried underground. In our next episode, we'll discover what geologic keys are hidden within the famed combes of the Côte d'Or, as we take a closer look into the vineyards of Van Romane and the exceptional fringes of the villages that surround it. Thank you to our guests, Camille Thiriet, Charles Lachaux, Antoine Gouges, and Erwan Faiveley. Thank you to Paul Wasserman, Daniel Jonas, and Françoise Vannier for your commentary, guidance, and expertise. Our main source for historical and technical information is Inside Burgundy by Jasper Morris. This episode is made possible by our Season 2 partners, Becky Wasserman & Co., La Palais, and Acker Wines. Remember, you can now get 15% off your first order of $350 or more at Acker Wines by entering the code ROADSIDE at checkout. Check out their website, ackerwines.com, for more details. Roadside Terroir is hosted and produced by me, Brenna Quigley, recording and sound engineering by Nick Canepa, and original music and sound design by Jeff Alvarez. If you liked this episode, please share it and give us a review. It really does make a difference. This season wouldn't be possible without the support from all of you. Check out our website, roadsideterroir.com, to learn how you can stay in touch and how to help support this season by donating, sponsoring, or becoming a Roadside Insider. We'd like to extend a special thank you to our friends and patrons, Stephen Lipin and Shelby Perkins. Thank you for making this episode possible. Thank you to Esa Eslami, Jerusha Frost, Ali Massie, Summer Stabe, Michael Sager, and everyone else who helped make this episode a reality.
Les Saint-Georges would be an exception in a sense that this rusticity is well wrapped in a great wine. But still, you still get this. Damn. Okay.
Wow.
They forgot we were here. Damn. I'm going to.
That's great.
That's live.